Hey everyone, Andrew back again and welcome to another video. And for today's video I'm going to be talking about some Australian heavy metal bands. This is kind of a band spotlight video I guess, and I'm just basically wanting to talk a little bit about some Australian metal bands that I really like that unfortunately I don't hear get mentioned, or very little, or if at all. And I definitely consider them to be underrated, and I think they definitely need a little bit more exposure. So with that being said, I'm not going to be talking about some of the more popular bands like AC/DC for example, because everyone already knows who they are. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and most importantly hopefully you discover some new bands or albums to check out. So with that being said, I'll just get straight into it here, and we'll start things off with a new wave of traditional heavy metal band called Elm Street. These guys are awesome. They haven't been around too long, so they are definitely a modern traditional heavy metal band, but I own a couple of their albums, Barbed Wire Metal, which is really good, this album right here, and lyrically and song wise they've got a pretty heavy horror influence, which is right up my alley because I love horror. But I think the songs and lyrics are really good, and then instrumental wise the drumming and guitars are fantastic. So that's Barbed Wire Metal. And then I also own Knock 'Em Out with a Metal Fist, which again, really good album. So yeah, if you're a fan of modern new wave of traditional heavy metal and you've never heard of these guys before, definitely check them out. The next band that I'm wanting to talk a little bit about is a modern thrash band. They are very typical in terms of a modern thrash sound, but they are really good, and that is Harlot. So this is their second album, Proliferation. They've released one album before this called Origins. I don't own it, unfortunately it is pretty hard to come by now, but this is a really good follow-up. Just really killer, solid modern thrash. And then I also own their third album from a couple of years ago, Extinction. Again, really good stuff. So that's Harlot. So yeah, if you're a fan of modern thrash, definitely check these guys out if you haven't already. The next band is a little bit more well known, especially over here in Australia. They've been around for ages, since the 90s I believe, and they're still going. And I've got to say they are extremely consistent from album to album. They haven't really released a bad album. Now they're not for everyone, because the band that I'm talking about here is Destroyer 666. Now these guys are blackened thrash, so definitely not for everyone. Now I can say for myself, I'm not a fan of traditional black metal, it's not really my thing, but I love these guys, I think they're great. So yeah, if you're not a fan of traditional black metal, but you are a fan of thrash, I would definitely recommend at least giving these guys a try. So anyway, this is their most recent EP, I think it came out last year, Call of the Wild. Really good stuff. This is available to listen to here on YouTube, so definitely check it out. And I'll just quickly go through the other albums that I own from the band. So this is their most recent full length from a few years ago, Wildfire, and I do apologise about the glare. This is really good. This is one of my favourite albums from them actually. Then we have Defiance. Again, another really good album. As I said, really consistent across each of their albums really. Next one we have is Cold Steel. And I love the artwork on this one. And the back of it. And the last one that I own is Phoenix Rising. So I do not own their debut album yet, but I definitely need to pick that one up at some point. So yeah, Destroyer 666, really good blackened thrash. The next band that I'm wanting to talk about is one that has been around since the 80s. They've taken a few pretty lengthy hiatuses, but as far as I know they're still active, and that of course is Hobbs, Angel of Death. Classic Aussie thrash band, and sadly another one that I never really hear anyone talk about. They haven't released a whole lot of albums. I think they've only released 3 or 4 in total, I believe. This is their debut album. If you're a fan of Slayer and you've never heard of these guys before, Hobbs, Angel of Death will be right up your alley, because very heavy Slayer influence and sound with these guys, and they're just absolutely killer classic thrash sound to them. So yeah, that's Hobbs, Angel of Death. And this is their most recent album from a couple of years ago, Heaven's Bled. They took a pretty lengthy hiatus before they came back and released this album, but this album is an absolutely killer comeback thrash album. So yeah, as I said, very heavy Slayer influence and sound with these guys. That's Hobbs, Angel of Death. The next band is a pretty unknown band. It's from the 90s, from the mid-90s. They only released 2 albums, and that is Allegiance. This is their debut album, Desecration. This is a really nice release. It's like a 2-disc digibook. Comes with the CD and the DVD, which is pretty cool. These guys are good. I know a lot of people have not very high opinions on 90s thrash, and I don't necessarily either, but I really enjoy Allegiance. I think their sound is really good, and yeah, they're just a really underrated band. So they've released one other album after this one, Skin Man, which unfortunately is pretty hard to come by. I don't own it. But yeah, Allegiance with their debut album, Desecration. Really good 90s thrash. The next band is a band that I'm pretty sure isn't around anymore. They've had an interesting career. They were around for years, and they only released 1 album, and it took them forever to release it. They didn't release their first album till the late 90s, I believe, and that is Armored Angel. Now this band is not going to be for everyone, because they are a death thrash band. So musically they've got a really awesome thrash sound, but vocally they've got that death metal growls. So probably not for everyone, but if that's your thing, I definitely recommend them. So yeah, as I said, they only released 1 official album, and this is it right here. And it's called Angel of the Sixth Order. And this one came out in 1999, I believe, or the late 90s anyway. So really good stuff. And then I also own a 2-disc compilation album, Hymns of Hate, and this is basically a compilation album of their early EPs and demos. So again, really good stuff. Death thrash, so if that's your thing, definitely check out Armored Angel. And last but certainly not least, one of my favourite Australian metal bands, but just one of my favourite thrash metal bands, period. These guys are fairly new to the scene, and that is Desecration. Now, I've talked about these guys in a video that I did a couple of years ago when I showcased their album To the Gallows, which we will get to in a second. This is one of their live albums. Really good stuff. the best way to sum up these guys is they are basically a modern version of 80s Bay Area thrash. So if you like all those awesome Bay Area thrash bands from the 80s, you will like Desecrator. Really kick-ass band. And then this is their first full-length album, To the Gallows. Absolutely killer stuff from start to finish. There's honestly not a track that I don't like within this album. This one is also available on vinyl, so if you're a predominant vinyl collector, yeah, this one is also available on vinyl. But yeah, as I said, absolutely fantastic throwback sound to 80s Bay Area thrash is the best way to sum up Desecrator. So really awesome stuff. So there you go guys, that is it for this video. I just basically wanted to shine a bit of light on some of the Australian heavy metal bands that I don't really hear get talked about too much, that I really like and consider to be pretty underrated. So if you've heard of any of these guys or these albums, let me know in the comments section below. And if you haven't, well, you now have some new bands and albums to check out. Most of these albums you can probably listen to on YouTube, and most of these CDs at least should be pretty easy to come across. I know they're readily available over here in Australia, eBay, Amazon, so it shouldn't be too hard to track most of these albums down to buy physically. And whether they're on vinyl or not, I'm not entirely sure. I think a couple of them are, but you'll definitely be able to pick up CD copies pretty easily for the most part. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.